What percentage of success can be attributed or given credit to just showing up? Now, obviously I don't have the answer to this, but one of my favourite quotes of all time, which actually one of my good friends Lucas told me was from Seneca, is that luck is when preparation and opportunity collide. And it's interesting because I do believe that we inherently create our own luck. And I think preparation is part of growing up. It's part of taking ownership of being an adult, giving other people the respect that you wish to have for yourself, and treating others with that same level of respect as well. And that includes turning up to things on time and just turning up to commitments that you set generally, whether that be a challenge that you've dedicated yourself to, a hobby or a business, whatever. And if you regularly turn up on a consistent basis, you are increasing the likelihood that you get lucky at that thing. Because if you do it long enough, if you have an infinite length game, anything that can happen will happen. And that's one of the nice things about the universe, that no matter how improbabilistic something is, the universe is so vast that if it physically can happen, it will, on an infinite basis. And so if you extend the horizon by which you play games, by which you play life, you'll get lucky, for certain, which is really interesting. And, you can force it a little bit by being prepared for a certain outcome. Let's imagine that you're a business, you're trying to get funds for something. Yeah, let's try and say you're trying to get funding. If you had a pitch deck ready to go at all times, downloaded on your phone, if you ever meet someone who might be a potential investor and wants to know more, you could open it up there and then and talk to them because you've got it ready. And then all of a sudden, wow, that's really, really lucky. Or how about you've done that preparation and you actually go to a load of events where investors meet? Now you've just put yourself in a place of opportunity. And if you combine the two, you are creating your own luck, which I think is poetic. The universe has a really interesting one that you guys probably have heard of, fusion. And I want to fact check myself on this. I'm actually not 100% sure, but I remember learning this in my physics degree, that the sun isn't hot enough for fusion to occur. It shouldn't work, but it does. Now, if anyone's heard of quantum tunneling before, it's a mind-boggling idea. Essentially, think teleportation or wormholes. And without that effect, without quantum tunneling being physically possible, we wouldn't have the sun. And so I can give you a brief insight into how it works. Particles have a wave-like nature in terms of probabilistically, where are they likely to be positioned. They're not, it's hard, when you measure the precise location of a thing, you can't then measure its velocity. And if you know its velocity, you can't precisely measure its location. And by measuring its location, it then changes. Really, really odd concept. But essentially what this means is, imagine you're stuck in imagine you're in a walled garden, and it's on a slope. You're inside the garden, you can't get out, right? But just over the wall, there's now another place you could sit next to it, right? Now, as a point particle like an electron or a proton or something like that, there's a probabilistic nature that you're in the garden, right? But sometimes you might be, the theory states, it's an infinite distance as to where you could be, but it tends to zero quite quickly. But there is a chance that you could just appear outside the wall. You could teleport. That's essentially what happens in the sun. every time fusion occurs. And yet, because it happens on such a significant scale, in terms of how big the sun is, and I promise you cannot even comprehend the size of the Earth, let alone the size of the sun, that it happens so regularly, because it is so big, that it actually runs, an intergalactic bomb. That's what the sun is. And what's funny is with quantum tunneling, you can increase the likelihood it's going to happen by increasing the temperature. The faster the particles move, the more energy they have, the more likely they are to appear on the other side of the wall. And then more likely they are to teleport. And that's essentially what happens. We get closer and closer to the point where, instead of it being guaranteed, imagine like water filling up in a cup and then definitely flowing over. Imagine a cup that's not quite full, but somehow some of the water could just pour out without the cup moving. Exactly. But the closer to the lid you get it, the more likely that teleportation is to happen. And I'm thinking about this today in terms of, we could do that with our own systems and opportunities in life if you become more prepared and you expose yourself to more opportunities. You're increasing how full your glass is. You're increasing the temperature of your sun, and therefore the number of times that you'll teleport, the number of times you'll get lucky, the number of times you'll quantum tunnel. Giving you a little bit of insight into my degree there and trying to philosophize and intellectualize it and put it into my thoughts for today. And all of this has stemmed from the idea of just watching a film called The Forge. It was nice, a really nice film, but it's quite heavily religious based, and I've held quite a lot of animosity towards religion throughout my life because it was forced upon me. But the more people I meet who are heavily Christian, the more I respect it. And there are parts of it that I absolutely love. But I admit I'm not a believer. But a lot of this thought of increase the likelihood that things will work for you, I love that religion does that. Like, making your bed in the morning is a common thing that people are like, that's what successful people do. Inherently, does making your bed increase the chance that you are successful? No, never. It's irrelevant. No one's going into your bedroom. But what it does is it ensures that you are up early enough to be able to do that you're not rushing, and then you might be early. And when you're early to events, you don't get stuck by unlikely events that are guaranteed to happen, like trains running late, car crashes, etc. And it sets you up. Being prepared sets you up for being lucky when things go wrong. And I think that's my whole thoughts, my whole takeaway for today comes down to that quote and the connection that it has with religion and increasing your own likelihood of success through preparation and opportunity. So there we go. I think part of being successful is showing up, and showing up increases your opportunity. That's it. Have a great day, guys. Peace.